Welcome to what was going to be my top 5 decks of 2020, but is actually my top 4 decks of 2020 because I realised I didn't have 5 decks to show you. 2020 for tarot decks has been an odd year for me in that I've had decks I've enjoyed working with but not loved. I've had decks that I worked with and have now got rid of out of my collection because I just didn't connect with them at all. And then I had 4 decks this year that I really loved and keep wanting to go back to. So I'm just going to show you those 4 and have a quick flick through the cards, talk a little bit about what I love about them, and I envision this being a reasonably short video. So the first deck I want to talk about is the Lightseers Tarot by Chris-Anne. It's not in order because I have been using it, and I have been, it's been no secret on this channel that I love this deck. I've talked about it before. I like to call it my little boho chick. I know some people feel like it's got a really young vibe. I don't get that so much. I think it's got a really mature, chilled out, relaxed, confident vibe. To me, it feels like someone who has matured into themselves and really found themselves, really has confidence in who they are and has really settled into their sense of self. I really get that kind of vibe from it. I love the artwork. I love the way it reads. It's got some of my favourite cards ever in it, which possibly aren't going to come up, which is fine. I'm not going to go looking for them. I just immediately connected with this deck. Immediately. I have used it on and off for different readings, even when it hasn't been the deck that I've been working with. I've still gone back to it and used it for things. I've used it for my end of year reading. I've used it for my reading for next year. I'm just really, really in love with this deck. And this is probably going to be a lifelong favourite for me. I think I love the Queen of Swords. I love the Queen of Swords in this deck. Next up, we have the Modern Witch Tarot by Lisa Sterle. Again, not in order because I work with this deck and I'm not somebody who tends to put my decks back in order unless I really feel like they need a good cleanse. I wasn't sure how I would feel about this deck. I am not the biggest fan of the traditional original RWS deck. I have a lot of respect for Pamela Coleman-Smith and what she's done with that deck, but I'm not the biggest fan of her art style. And I really wanted an RWS that was diverse and that was modern, that represented the world that I actually live in. Tarot for me is not a big esoteric thing, although I know it can be used that way. It's more of a tool. It's more of a life tool. It's a tool that helps me negotiate my world and the world that I actually live in. So I really wanted an RWS that looked like the world I lived in, that represented the world I lived in. And I think this, in many ways, this deck does that really, really well. I'm not too keen on the cardstock. For me, I don't love the cardstock. It's a bit thick and a little bit plasticky, but it's I think it's going to do a really good job of keeping the cards neat, for want of a better word. But overall, like, this is probably my all-time favourite RWS clone. And I just love it. I love the different body types. I love the diversity in skin colours. I love, you know, that we've got different types of people in there. I love some of these cards. But most of all, I just love how modern it feels. Modern, if you ask my mother. It feels. And I love how well I've connected with it and how easy I find it to read, how much deeper it helps me understand the RWS system. There's just so much I love about this deck. Next for me was the Shadowland Tarot by Monica Bordisky. This deck has that real cute but creepy vibe about it that I love. It's got a kind of Tim Burton-esque feel. It's got a Far Side feel to me. There's it's very reminiscent of the Far Side kind of style. I love the way it reads. It's so much fun. I did use it over October as like a Halloween-y type of deck, but it's definitely a deck that I would use all year round. It's a deck that I wanted for a long time and was a present from my parents. My parents gave me the money and I bought the deck, but it's a present from my parents. I really, really love the style, and that it reads beautifully for me. It reads really well. I have a lot of fun working with this deck, and I do kind of feel like it connects to my inner teenager almost. So this was definitely a favourite for me. And then last but most definitely not least, we have the Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rode. I was a little concerned that I would struggle with the size of these cards, but I very quickly found a way to shuffle them that worked for me. I think that the size is perfect for the amount of detail in every single card. I only recently talked about this in my November wrap-up video. There isn't a single card in this deck that I dislike. I love them all. I connected with this on a really deep, soulful level. This feels like a really personal deck to me. It's not one that I would think to grab to read for other people. It's definitely one that I would read more to get some insight into some internal stuff, like internal reflection, self-reflection, than external, what do I need to know about the world around me kind of thing. I very strongly feel like the majors read as internal stuff and as stuff that's going on inside that I really need to be aware of, and then the minors tend to be external things that are having an impact on the internal that I need to be aware of. It's a deck for me that would work really well for shadow work. I think that personally, I think the best deck for shadow work is not a dark deck. It's not a creepy deck necessarily, but it is a deck that you connect with on that deep, soulful, almost unconscious, unexplainable level. And I really feel like this is a deck that I have that connection with. I'm so happy to have this deck in my collection now. I absolutely love every single card. Everyone. Not a single card that I dislike. So there we go. That's my 4 favourite decks of 2020. I thought there would be at least 5, but it was a funny year, as I said at the beginning. And I am looking forward to seeing what decks other people have enjoyed working with in 2020. See you all soon for another one. Take care, everyone, and lots of love. Bye-bye.